Hello and welcome to the Saratoga Power Lunch. I'm Yan Zhao, Mayor of the City of Saratoga. Saratoga Power Lunch is a monthly webinar series on the second Tuesday of the month from 12 p.m. to 12:30 p.m. that gives residents a chance to learn about Saratoga in bite-sized pieces. Today's webinar will feature Kirsten Struve, Valley Water Assistant Officer for Water Supply. Kirsten will be sharing information about the current drought conditions and the local water supply. Kirsten has over 25 years of experience leading water resource programs. As Assistant Officer in Valley Water's Water Supply Division, she leads water reuse, water conservation, and water supply planning teams. She has previously worked on stormwater, recycled water, water quality, climate change, and wastewater programs. Prior to joining Valley Water, Kirsten worked for the cities of Palo Alto and San Jose. Kirsten has a bachelor's degree in biology from Knox College and a master's in environmental management from Yale University. Valley Water is a special district founded in 1929. The district's goals are to provide safe, clean drinking water, provide flood protection, and serve as steward of streams in Santa Clara Valley. Valley Water manages water supplies, providing water to water retailers like San Jose Water, who then sell water to residential customers. Most of California is currently experiencing severe or extreme drought conditions. The governor has called for a 15% reduction in water use. Locally, Valley Water declared a water shortage emergency and instituted a mandatory 15% reduction in water use compared to 2019. Where climate change may be compounding water supply issues, California is no stranger to drought. After periodically experiencing droughts, the city of Saratoga has made a priority to reduce water use since the late 80s. Over 2 decades ago, the city transitioned to smart irrigation controllers that can detect leaks and adjust watering based on weather conditions. The city has also replaced over 66,000 square feet of turf with drought-tolerant landscaping, saving almost 1.2 million gallons of water every year. In July, the City Council directed staff to begin working towards converting an additional 36,000 square feet of turf into drought-responsible landscaping. This is expected to save over 620,000 gallons of water per year, bringing the total amount of water saved from turf conversions up to 1.8 million gallons of water per year. Through these efforts and others to reduce city water use, we are aiming to reduce our water use by 15% compared to 2019 levels, in alignment with the goals of Valley Water. Kirsten, thank you so much for joining us today and talk about the drought and the current water conditions. The floor is yours to begin your presentation.
Thank you so much, Mayor. And I just wanted to mention that we also have Domingo Candelas from our OG, Office of Government Relations here, in case there are any questions that relate to that. And I'm going to share my screen. Somehow I lost the host abilities now. Okay, no, here we go. All right. Thank you again. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. So thank you again for having me today. And as the mayor already mentioned, we have our mission at Valley Water is to provide Silicon Valley with safe, clean water for a healthy life, environment, and economy. And we do that by being the wholesaler for clean water, providing flood protection, being stewards to the environment. And we serve the entire county. So that's 15 cities, 2 million people, and 13 water retailers. And then also we manage our groundwater. So we service the well owners. And one thing we do to prepare for drought always is to have a diverse portfolio, because that ensures reliability. And what we mean by that is that we have water from different sources that we provide in Santa Clara County. We have local water, so when it rains, we capture it in our reservoirs, and we also manage our groundwater and recharge our groundwater aquifers. We have imported water. That's half of our water comes from the Delta or the Hetch Hetchy system. And then we have recycled water, which is, we support all the different wastewater treatment plants in Santa Clara County with, promoting recycled water, and we're working on advanced purification. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And right now that's 5%, but we hope to grow it to 10%. And we do count conservation here, because without our very aggressive conservation programs, we would be using 15% more water. And so we will talk about that as well. And so what is imported water? It basically comes from, the snowpack in the Sierras through state and federal water projects. And we have a very comprehensive and flexible water system, which prepares us, for reliability into the future. We can deliver about 300 million gallons of raw water, every day through our distribution system. We have 10 reservoirs, 3 pump stations, 142 miles of pipeline, 3 water treatment plants, 1 purification facility, and then also almost 400 acres of recharge ponds, and that's how we manage our groundwater. And our agency was actually, as the mayor said, started a long time ago, and with the job of managing groundwater, because back in 1929, when we started, so much water was being pulled out of the ground that the ground was sinking in some areas up to 13 feet. That's called subsidence. And community leaders were really concerned about having to dig deeper and deeper wells, and pumping costs increasing. So they wanted to create an agency that would help manage the groundwater. And that is how we got started. And it's still a really important part of our mission today. And this is a really interesting chart that kind of shows what I just talked about. As population increased, which is the green line that increases, water use and pumping increased as well, and then the ground started sinking. So, basically groundwater elevation is lower now, or it was lower, but as you can see, it has recovered because we've been doing a really good job managing our groundwater, preventing the sinking from happening, which nowadays would obviously impact a lot of important infrastructure like roads and pipelines and all sorts of other things. And we also protect against saltwater intrusion. And while I'll talk about the current drought more specifically, I wanted to talk a little bit about what we do in terms of water supply planning, because we need to plan for the future to make sure that we have water available for Santa Clara County. And I'll talk about our water supply planning process, which includes, assessing what we need, developing different scenarios, and then planning our investments and monitoring. So the way we do that is through our water supply map. This was adopted, the Ensure Sustainability Strategy was adopted by our board in 2012. And this water supply master plan was developed to guide our investments through 2040. And the parts of our strategy are secure our existing system, basically protect what we already have, not just our sort of hard infrastructure, but also our water rights and our contracts for imported water, things like that. The second part of our strategy is to expand the use of drought resilient supplies. That includes recycled water as well as conservation. And we need to be reliable in a future under a changed climate. And then optimize the system means just using what we have in a flexible way. So in some years, our supplies will exceed demands because it's wet. And that will be true into the future. And additional facilities would increase our flexibility to use or store these excess supplies. So additional infrastructure could increase our ability to respond to outages, like if there's a pipeline break or future droughts and water quality problems. So these three elements together provide a framework to have a sustainable and reliable water supply into the future. And they strike a balance between protecting what we have, investing in the future, and making sure that we make the most of our water supply system, while also keeping in mind, affordability and rates. Much of the infrastructure we have is aging and needs maintenance. And so our capital improvement program plans every 5 years what the major projects are. And as you probably know, one of the main projects right now is our Anderson Dam retrofit. And an important thing to plan for the future is planning for climate change. Here's a picture of the snowpack before and during the last drought. And this year, it's even worse. We had basically the snow melt 2 months early, and most of it, went into the dry ground because it was already so dry rather than running off into the reservoirs that provide our imported water. So what are we doing about that? One of the things we're doing is our purified water project. So this is a type of investment that improves our water supply portfolio because we develop a local drought resilient water supply. Right now, we run the Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center. It is in the city of San Jose, near the San Jose wastewater treatment plant. And it was meant to demonstrate that this technology can safely produce purified water that could in the future be used for drinking. Right now, this facility enhances the quality of the purple pipe recycled water, so the non-potable water that is used for irrigation and industrial uses. But we are, through a project that we are currently developing, hoping to expand the use of purified water for drinking. And what we mean by that is we are pursuing a project that is called indirect potable reuse. So basically what we want to do is use highly treated wastewater, put it through additional processes that are currently used at that Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center, and then pipe it to our groundwater recharge ponds along Los Gatos Creek in the city of Campbell, where it would then percolate into the ground along with other water, local water and imported water, and be available in the groundwater basin. The groundwater basin is actually our largest storage. And so it helps us in two ways, by having water during droughts and by preventing subsidence that I talked about before. And this project could be located either in San Jose by expanding our existing facility, or in Palo Alto because we have an agreement with the cities of Palo Alto and Mountain View for their wastewater. So then we would be piping water 18 to 20 miles to the Los Gatos recharge system. It's a really exciting project that will help us prepare for future droughts. And as the mayor said, we are in a really serious drought right now. Our county in particular is mostly an extreme drought, with some of it an exceptional drought, so the highest drought status. So we have a drought proclamation that includes Santa Clara County. And as the mayor said, Valley Water declared a water shortage emergency condition. And that is because the snowpack disappeared really early on this year. And our local water supplies are low as well. It didn't have much rain. It's been really dry. Imported water allocations are low. And that means we can't manage our groundwater levels, and people will pump more water because that's what's available. So we are risking dry wells, especially in South County, and resumed land subsidence in North County. But we're working really hard on getting transfer water supplies and really pushing our water conservation programs. And so we doubled our landscape rebate, which is really popular and has seen a huge increase in interest. We're doing a lot of outreach. We have an interactive web page. We have reduced deliveries for our retailers. We are still ensuring adequate recharge in South County, but we're pausing other releases to creeks and ponds. And we're providing monthly updates to our board and our Water Conservation and Demand Management Committee meeting. So why is water conservation so important? Not just during droughts, but always. It saves money. It ensures we have a reliable water supply because every drop we don't use is available for the future. It reduces the amount we need to import from the Sacramento Delta. And it also reduces pollution because things like overwatering can result in runoff that carries, fertilizer or other things into our creeks and bay. And then it reduces greenhouse gas emissions because pumping water around California is one of the main uses of energy in California. And more than half of the water used by residents is used outside. So cutting back on landscape watering is a really effective way to conserve water. And we have many conservation programs to assist residents, businesses, and agriculture in reducing water use, including landscape rebates, indoor fixture rebates, outreach and education, lots of things to help everyone reduce their water use and still have a beautiful yard. And with that, I'm done with my presentation and I'm ready for questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation. We truly appreciate the partnership of the Valley Water. So before today's webinar, we did ask our attendees to submit questions. So I do have quite a few. All right, let me start with the first one. How long do we expect to remain in drought conditions? I know it's hard to estimate, but this is the first question. Also, if the current drought persists, what else, what does this mean for our water supply, and can we expect to call on residents to further reduce water? And you talk about briefly about, what you're doing to address the water drought condition. And maybe you can elaborate a little bit more. I think people are still want to know, what else you're doing in the long term. Thank you.
Sure, of course. Yeah, so it is really hard to know when this drought will be over. It may be part of a really long mega drought where we only had a couple years break because our last drought was not that long ago. So we don't really know. And climate change may bring additional droughts. So that's why it's really important to have a diverse water portfolio, work really hard on different investments like additional storage, the purified water, and conservation. And we are, of course, working on, rebuilding Anderson Dam, which is kind of adding to the crisis this time around because normally we would have water stored there. But we were ordered by a federal agency to drain Anderson Dam to protect the public health and safety in the case of an earthquake. So we don't have Anderson Dam during this drought. So fixing it is a really high priority for us, as is development of the purified water and conservation programs. We actually are developing an updated water conservation strategic plan to see how we can grow our programs and get more participation, because we are far from having exhausted all the opportunities for conservation with, like I said, half of the use, typical residential use being outside. There's a lot more lawn to go.
Thank you. The second question, can you explain what desalination is and if this is a viable option for Santa Clara County?
Of course, so desalination is very similar to water purification. It is really the same process. You're using, instead of wastewater, you're using seawater to put it through similar processes. And we have actually partnered regionally on a desalination project to examine the feasibility in the Bay Area. Obviously, we're not near the ocean, we're near the Bay, which is a very sensitive ecosystem. And regardless of whether you use wastewater or seawater, there is a brine to manage, right? So you're sending this water through a treatment with membranes, and then there's going to be something left that has to be managed. And there's just less in wastewater. That, you know, wastewater is basically fresh water that has been used in people's homes and businesses, and then it's been treated at a wastewater treatment plant, and it's mostly clean already. And then if we purify that, it actually uses less energy and has less things to remove to use it for drinking water purposes than would seawater. We are still obviously interested in desalination, you know, because in the future we may need it, but it isn't as simple as it sounds, because there are a lot of regulations about how, you know, taking water from the bay, which is a sensitive ecosystem. So, but yeah, we are looking at that as well.
Okay, thank you. Another question. Saratoga is currently in the process of updating its housing element. Based on state housing projections and the regional housing needs allocation, regional housing needs allocation process, we are expecting that we will need to plan for the additional of more than 1,700 new homes between 2023 and 2031. This represents a big jump in housing for our community, and communities across the state are seeing the same. Given drought conditions, one of the concerns I've heard from our residents is whether there's enough water to sustain projected growth. Has Valley Water considered whether we will have enough water to serve the additional households projected by the state here in Santa Clara County?
Yes, we have. So through the water supply master plan that I talked about, we do look at housing projections and also work with the cities in our county. And so when we make projections to 2040, we have already incorporated the expected growth to then guide our investments into the future.
Thank you. Next question. There was a recent article in the San Jose Mercury News that said past hydrology models are no longer reliable due to climate change. How is Valley Water responding to climate change in terms of its operations and the future planning?
That's a great question. So our board just approved a climate change action plan that addresses basically our contribution to climate change. So how can we reduce our greenhouse gases, as well as the impact of climate change on all of our mission areas, and how can we adapt? So water supply, ecosystem, and flood, because all of them, every single part of our agency will be impacted by climate change. And in terms of water supply, we actually are working with a professor at Santa Clara University, as well as other experts on ensuring that we understand what the impacts are. And so our water supply master plan, we have an update to our board every year. It's called the Monitoring and Assessment Program. And this year's update will focus exactly on that question, like how are we incorporating climate change and, you know, modeling for the future. So that should happen later this year. And we are definitely actively working on that. We understand that climate change will impact every part of our agency.
Thank you. The last question. We have a few creeks in Saratoga that are close to homes. We often get questions about who is responsible for managing the creeks. Are all creeks under the jurisdiction of Valley Water? If not, what is the easiest way to find out if a creek near your home is or is not under the jurisdiction of Valley Water? For those creeks that are under Valley Water's authority, what do your responsibilities include?
That's a good question, a little bit out of my league. I'll try to answer it as best I can. So only about a third of the creek miles in Santa Clara County are managed by Valley Water. So we either own or we have easements along only about a third of creeks. The remainder are either owned by other public agencies. So cities, the county, things like that, or they may actually be owned by private parties. So there are neighborhoods where basically people's backyards extend into the middle of the creek. The creeks we manage have flood protection projects typically, and so our responsibility is to maintain our flood control facilities, meaning our levees and things like that. And there was another part to that question that I haven't. Oh, how can you find out? If there's an issue with the creek, we have an online system to tell us about that issue, and if it's not ours, we will help whoever is making that request figure out who it should go to. And maybe Domingo has another answer.
No, that's excellent, Kirsten. You answered it very well. We work collaboratively with our municipal partners like Saratoga and the county on different streams. Contrary to popular belief, we don't own every stream or a creek in the county, and that third figure that Kirsten Struve is accurate. We do have an application, so we do have an app. It's Access Valley Water that you're able to geotag and geolocate certain locations and your home to see who owns the stream adjacent, behind, nearby, or your creek nearby, and we will certainly help identify if it's ours and the maintenance needs if needed, and definitely work with you to find out who has easement on that, if it is not ours or if it is ours. So that's our answer. Thank you, Kirsten.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all the questions I have received. Once again, Kirsten and Domingo, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very grateful to you and the team at Valley Water for ensuring we have got access to clean, safe drinking water, providing flood protection, and working to keep our creeks and streams healthy. We appreciate everything you do. And thank you.
Thank you so much for having us, and we really appreciate the community responding to our call for conservation and moving us in the right direction so we can weather this crisis.
Thank you. All right. A final note, a recording of this webinar will be posted on the city website. You can also find the topics for upcoming webinars there. Our next Saratoga Power Lunch will be on Tuesday, October 12th at 12 p.m. I hope you all can join us. Thank you. All right.